Welcome back, students, to ACE Academics YouTube channel. Today, we'll be focusing on the Grade 6 National Assessment, and we'll be doing a practice past paper that is the Social Sciences June 24th, 2022 past paper. Now remember, for the social sciences exam, you have 75 minutes. So I tell my students you have 75 minutes. That means even before the exam, you need to start practicing the past papers, which is the Bible, quote unquote, Bible of the Grade 6 National Assessment exams. Once you start practicing your past papers very early, you will have absolutely no issues when come for the exam because you already know how to use your time wisely. Now, it is always wise to read your instructions first. So the next paper you'll see is your instruction sheet. But before we move to the instruction sheet, I will tell you that the social sciences exam is actually divided into 4 sections. Section 1 is location and people. Section 2 is civic ideals and practices. Section 3 is resources, and Section 4 is social issues and change. So let's move on to our instruction sheet. Now here it tells us, read the following instructions before attempting the test. Number 1, this paper contains 50 questions. Number 2, for each question, circle the letter on the answer sheet that matches the answer you have chosen. And number 3, use a pencil to shade in the correct answer. Now this exam, whereas before it was a written exam, but the Ministry of Education, they are actually moving towards putting the exams fully online. So you may do it on paper, you may do it online. So let's actually start the paper, right? Number 1, and this one is a very tricky question. So we are at section 1, location, people, and places. Instructions: look at the image below to answer questions 1 and 2. So this means that this image is actually related to questions 1 and 2. Now for us to see just a little clear, we are going to zoom in, okay? So number 1, the piece of land labeled X is an example of a /an. So we look at the picture, we analyze it, we start to figure out, okay, where is this? I maybe know this area, right? Then we read the answers. A is island, B, isthmus, C, peninsula, and D, archipelago. Now, what I have noticed is that most students, when they think of this area, they just think of it as a peninsula. They are not completely wrong, but this is what is the peninsula. The land here, this is what is a peninsula. And according to the definition of a peninsula is a piece of land jutting out into water, whether with or without a well-defined isthmus. Now, if you look at the answer selections, you will notice that isthmus is part of this, right? So, this part labeled X is what is known as the isthmus, and this is what is known as the peninsula. Now, you might be asking, but Miss, what is the definition of an isthmus? An isthmus is a strip of land with sea on either side, and it forms a link between 2 larger areas of land. But if you know this area, you know that it is not necessarily land. It is not necessarily land, right? It is actually sand that is in this area. And when I learned about this area, I learned about it as Scott said, tombolo. And a tombolo is actually a sandy or a shingle isthmus. So this means we keep coming back to isthmus, isthmus, isthmus. So that means X is actually an isthmus, okay? So this part is the peninsula, whereas this sandy bar here is the isthmus. So that means for number 1, the answer would be B. Okay? Moving on to number 2. This place in Dominica could most likely be, and once you know this, once you can identify what this is, you know that it would be C, Scott's Head. So number 1, the answer is B, and number 2, the answer is C. Let's move on. Bodies of water. So that means, students, you need to know all your bodies of water. And we're just going to zoom in just a little bit more. Right? So, number 3, the body of water labeled W is so W is right here. You need to know the bodies of water here, here, and here, right? So W would be the Gulf of Mexico. Now let's look at the other answers here. They have Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, Caribbean Sea, Gulf of Mexico. Now we know that W is the Gulf of Mexico, but we want to know where these other areas are, right? The Pacific Ocean is in this area here. The Atlantic Ocean is in this area here. And the Caribbean Sea is here, okay? So, actually, I will tell you some extra information. What makes a country Caribbean is the common denominator of the Caribbean Sea. So, once the Caribbean Sea washes on the shores of any of these countries here, they are considered a Caribbean country. So, that's why sometimes people would say, but Belize is not necessarily a Caribbean country. Yes, it is, because the Caribbean Sea touches it, right? So that's just some extra information for your knowledge. So number 3, the answer would be D. So W, Gulf of Mexico, right? Let's move on to number 4. So number 4, in which of the labeled continents are the Andes Mountains located? You need to know your continents. You need to know them. So they have P, S, Q, R. We know that P is which of the continents? Before I say it, which of the continents is this? Okay, if you said South America, then you are correct. How about S? If you said Africa, then you are correct. How about Q? If you said Europe, then you are correct. And R, if you said Asia, you are correct. Now, there are some that is not mentioned. Here would be North America, here would be Australia, and here would be Antarctica. So these are the 7 continents. So we call them out, and they say the Andes Mountains. Now, the Andes Mountains is located in South America. So this is the continent that we are looking at. So the answer for number 4 would be A. Excellent job so far. And even before I say the answers, I want you guys to work it out and see, okay, which one is the answer? You know, discuss. Pause the video, discuss, and try to figure out which is the answer, because this is how you learn best, okay? Let's move on to number 5. Alright, number 5, we're doing a bit of earth science here. We're going to zoom in once more, so I want you guys to see properly. So look at the diagram below and answer questions 5 and 6. So this is just like how number 1 and 2 was. So this picture, it relates to questions 5 and 6. So question 5, the part labeled 2 is called so that means you need to know the diagram of the earth. You need to know that. You need to know what is inside here, right? We know that number 1 is the crust. So this area here, all of this is the crust. All this here, so that means we're actually on the crust. We know that number 2 is the mantle, right? This area here is the mantle, right here. All this is the mantle. We know that number 3 is the outer core. So this area here would be the outer core. And number 4 is the inner core. Okay? So we have the crust, we had the mantle, we had the outer core, and we had the inner core. Very, very easy to remember. You just have to know crust, mantle, core, well, outer core, sorry, and inner core. Okay? Make sure you practice this. So this means that the part labeled number 2 would be which one? Right. So if you said that the answer is D, the mantle, then you are very correct for number 5. Excellent job. So number 6, which part of the earth is made up of plates drifting around slowly? So let's say if you didn't know about these plates they are talking about, you might be thinking of the plates that your mommy or your daddy would give you lunch in, right? Well, you wouldn't be quite right. The plates that they are talking about is tectonic plates, and there are various plates on the crust. So we have plates like the Caribbean plate. So for example, Dominica sits on the Caribbean plate. We have the Cocos plate. We have the Nazca plate. We have different plates, right? And these plates, they actually move. Now, the movement is not a very fast movement. It is very slow. But if there is a quick movement, a very sudden and quick movement, this is actually what causes earthquakes and tremors. So anytime that you're on your bed or you're on your couch or in your living room and you feel the ground or anything shake a little violently, that is actually what an earthquake is, and it is because of the movement of these tectonic plates. Now, back to the question. You might be asking, but where are tectonic plates located, right? They tell us which part of the earth is made up of plates drifting around slowly, and the answer would be A, the crust. So the crust is where these tectonic plates are. So if your answer for number 6 was A, crust, then you would be extremely correct. Let's move on to question 7. A localized and very intense low pressure system forming over the Atlantic Ocean with wind speeds at 60 miles per hour can be categorized as, so you need to know the wind speeds of different low pressure systems, right? So there are different ones. So here you see depression, hurricane, storm, tsunami. Anytime that you're doing multiple choice, you want to eliminate some answers. So tsunami would be one that I would eliminate from this. So we are looking at these three right now. We are looking, the answer would be depression, hurricane, or storm. Now you need to know the wind speeds as I was telling you. For tropical depression, the wind speeds would be 38 miles or less. For tropical storms, the wind speeds would be 39 miles per hour, I should say. Miles per hour, remember that's the unit. Miles per hour, I said miles earlier, but it's miles per hour, okay? So 39 miles per hour to 73 miles per hour, that would be a tropical storm. A category 1 hurricane would be 74 miles per hour to 95 miles per hour. A category 2 hurricane would be 96 miles per hour to 110 miles per hour. A category 3 hurricane would be 111 miles per hour to 129 miles per hour. A category 4 hurricane would be 130 miles per hour to 156 miles per hour. And the last category, which is something that most of you would know about, that is a category 5 hurricane like Hurricane Maria, that would be anything that is 157 miles per hour or greater. Okay? So 157 miles per hour or greater would be a category 5 hurricane. So we heard the ranges, we heard the miles per hour and all of that. So we have to decide which one is the correct one, right? So they told us that the wind speed is 60 miles per hour. So therefore, it would have to be a tropical storm, or here they have it as storm. And remember, the tropical storm, the wind speed is anywhere between 39 miles per hour to 73 miles per hour. So that means that that low pressure system that is forming over the Atlantic here would be a tropical storm. So all of these things, you need to learn them, you need to know them, because these are questions that they can ask in this section. Okay, moving on to question 8. So the answer for number 7 would be C. Moving on to question 8. Alright, question 8. Early civilizations settled and started exchanging goods and services by engaging in, is it A, sales, B, hire purchase, C, marketing, or D, barter? Anytime you hear of exchange of goods and services, it has to be barter. Okay? So the answer for number 8 would be D. So if you answer D, then you are very correct. Moving on to number 9. This group of people settled mostly in the Greater Antilles when they first arrived in the Caribbean. Is it A, Arawaks, B, Kalinagos, C, Dutch, or D, Africans? Now, they said the most important part here is Greater Antilles. So we know that different groups settled in different areas. Some settled in the Lesser Antilles and some settled in the Greater Antilles. Now the group which settled in the Lesser Antilles was the Kalinagos. So in Dominica we have a lot of Kalinagos. We actually have an entire area that is designated to them, which is the Kalinago territory, right? But in the Greater Antilles, the group of people which settled there were the Arawaks, and they became extinct after a time because of the genocide and all these different things that was happening. Remember, these were the Greater Antilles. This was actually the area where a lot of Europeans tried to settle. So although they met this group of people here, what they were trying to do is flex their muscles and say, I own this area. And the Arawaks, they were not having it. They were like, this is ours. We were here first. And the Europeans, they started enslaving these Arawaks. They wanted them to go and find gold and all kind of different things for them. And because of that brutality that they were facing, eventually the Arawaks actually died out. But the Kalinagos, they were more stronger. So they were not in Columbus bagay, or they were not in Columbus thing. They weren't about that life at all. The Kalinagos said, we were here first. We are going to fight with our bow and arrow and our slingshot and all kind of thing. And we are going to ensure that this remains ours, right? And because the Europeans found that were so hostile and whatever, they actually call them the Caribs. And this is why Kalinago people don't like for people to call them Caribs, because of what it is associated with. Remember, Caribs are associated with meat eaters and these kind of things. But this is not really what they practice, right? The Kalinago said that their name is Kalinago, so they wanted their name to be called Kalinago, and that was changed some time ago in Dominica. So now Carib people, it's no longer Carib, it's Kalinagos. So back to the question I always like to discuss, so you guys have that extra knowledge. Back to the question. The group of people settled mostly in the Greater Antilles when they first arrived in the Caribbean. So the answer would be A, because remember they said Greater Antilles. So A is the answer, Arawaks. Moving on to question 10. Question 10 says, laws and language were developed because nomads began to A, plant crops, B, settle down, C, write letters, or D, hunt animals. Now remember, nomads, these are people who move from one place to another. They cannot settle down. Now, eventually, they had to settle down. So this is when they started developing laws and language and all these different things to ensure that there was some sort of, they had to become civilized people, So when they started to settle down, this is when these things were developed. So if you answered B for number 10, then you are very correct. Laws and language were developed because nomads began to be settled down. Excellent work. So we are now moving on to section 2, which is civic ideals and practices. And the first section is patriotism. And let me just zoom in a little so you can see better. So number 11, the oral stories, varieties of local dishes and dialect that have been passed on to us by our ancestors help to make up Dominica's. Is it A, government, B, economy, C, habitat, or D, culture? And the correct answer would be D, culture. Remember, culture is the way of life of a people. And the oral stories, the varieties of dishes, and all these different things, they form part of who we are. They form part of our way of life. And our way of life is our culture. So therefore, number 11, the answer would be D. So if you answered D, if you said D, then the answer is D. Very good. Moving on to question. What indicator will show that a voter has voted on election day? Is it A, citizen certificate, B, ink stain thumb, C, voter's ID card, or D, stamped hand? What is your answer for this question? Alright, so if you said B, ink stain thumb, then you are very correct. Remember, they ask here what indicator. So what is the visible indicator that can show that I have voted on election day? So normally when people 18 and older go to the polls, they would dip their finger in some ink, and it would stain their form. It would make it blue, sometimes black, different colors, but mostly blue when it starts to wash out and whatnot. And this would actually show that a person has voted, so they cannot come back to vote again, right? So they cannot vote twice. You can only vote one time. So an ink will show the voting clerk, or whatever they call them, will show them that this person has already voted. So the answer for number 12 is B. Number 13. The scientific name for the national flower shown below. So we know that this is the Bois Quaib, but they're asking for the scientific name. So is it A, hibiscus, B, Amazona imperialis, C, Sabina carinalis, or D, flamboyant? So we are looking at B and C. We are eliminating A and D. Remember, anytime you're doing multiple choice, you start eliminating some of the answers, some of them that doesn't make any sense. So we're looking at B, which is Amazona imperialis, and C, Sabina carinalis. Now we know that the scientific name for the national bird of Dominica is the Amazona imperialis, but the scientific name for the national flower is the Sabina carinalis. So therefore, if you said C for number 13, then you are very correct. The scientific name for the Bois Quaib, or the national flower, is the Sabina carinalis. And the Cicero parrot, which is our national bird, the scientific name is Amazona imperialis. Okay, so these things you need to know. Number 14. Which line of the national anthem comes after the following? So pastures green and flowers of beauty, filling all with pure delight, and people strong and healthy. And we know that the next line for this would be, what answer you say? Very good. B, full of godly, reverent fear. So you need to know the lyrics of the national anthem. You need to know that. So that would be the next line. So if you, for number 14 you have B, then you are extremely correct. Let's move on. We are moving quite smoothly, I must say. Number 15. Which of the following is not of patriotism? Now, when answering these questions, you need to be careful. They put it in bold. They still underline it. They put it full black for you. So, see, if you do not see it there, then something is very wrong. Which of the following is not an act of patriotism? Is it A, buying groceries, B, obeying the laws of the land, C, paying taxes, or D, voting in a general election? No, they tell us is not. So we know that obeying laws is an act of patriotism. We know that paying taxes is an act of patriotism. We know that voting in a general election is an act of patriotism. So therefore, A is not an act of patriotism. Whether or not you buy groceries to put in your house, then oh well, so bad, so sad. It is not an act of patriotism, okay? So buying groceries is not an act of patriotism, okay guys? So number 15, the answer is A. You need to be careful. These types of questions is not. Remember that. Number 16. Who wrote the national anthem of Dominica? Is it A, Reverend W.O.M. Pond, B, Mr. Alwyn Lee, C, Mr. Jeff Joseph, or D, Mr. L.M. Christian? So we know that Mr. Alwyn Bully is the one who designed the national flag of Dominica. May his soul rest in peace. We know that Jeff Joseph was a cultural icon in terms of singing different music. He was from St. Joseph and he was very well known in the French territories and in St. Martin and these areas. We know that Mr. L.M. Christian, he's the one who composed the national anthem in terms of he wrote the music. But in terms of the words, who wrote the national anthem? If you answered A, Reverend W.O.M. Pond, then you are very correct. So number 16, the answer is A, to Reverend W.O.M. Pond. Moving on to number 17. Sorry. So we are now on cooperation. Which of the following is true about Dominica? Is it A, it is not a member of CARICOM? Apologies for my cough. There's a cough going around. But you know, we still have to make things happen for our grade 6 students, right? So is it A, it is not a member of CARICOM? B, it is divided into 3 parishes? C, it was once a colony of England? Or D, it was never a colony of France? So they're asking us here, which of the following is true about Dominica? So we are looking for the one that is true. So the first thing for this type of questions, you identify which ones are false. It is not a member of CARICOM, but that is false. Dominica is a member of CARICOM. B, it is divided into 3 parishes. We know that is false. Dominica is divided into 10 parishes. And then we have, it was once a colony of England. We know that is true. And then we have D, it was never a colony of France. England and France were the countries who were in battle for Dominica. I don't know, Dominica was the apple of their eye, right? And they were in constant battle. So that for D, it was never a colony of France. We know that that is completely false. So therefore, C, it was once a colony of England. We know that this one is true. So the answer for number 17 would be C, it was once a colony of England. All right, let us move on to question 18. Look at the picture below to answer the questions 18 and 19. So I zoom in well for you guys to see. So in the picture, we have here customs, we have here nationals and CARICOM members, we have here non-nationals and visitors. Number 18 tells us, why are there 2 different lines at the airport? Is it A, to ensure that the lines are not too long for the immigration officers? B, to make traveling easier for people within the region. C. To make the custom officer's job easier when searching travelers. Or D. To make CARICOM members feel like they are important. So for number 18, I would more lean on B. To make traveling easier for people within the region for this one. So if you answered B for number 18, then you would be correct. Number 19. Which country's nationals will not be able to follow the CARICOM line? So that means you need to know countries that are part of the CARICOM. A. Bahamians. We know Bahamas is part of the Caribbean. B. Dominicans. We know Dominica is part of the CARICOM. Let's say Caribbean before. CARICOM. C. Puerto Ricans. We know Puerto Rico is not part of the CARICOM. Or is it D. Haitians? We know that Haiti is part of CARICOM. So that means for number 19, the answer would be Puerto Ricans. Very good. Number 20. Which is not a function of the CARICOM Single Market and Economy CSME agreement? A. Promoting the free movement of Caribbean labor. C. Creating a regional government. Creating a regional government. C. Increasing trade among Caribbean member states. Or is it D. Fostering cultural exchange among Caribbean countries? So A is definitely a function. B is a function. C, increasing trade among Caribbean member states, is a function of the CARICOM Single Market and Economy. But D, fostering cultural exchange among Caribbean countries, would not be a part of that. The CARICOM Single Market and Economy is trade and these different things and free movement in the Caribbean, but it does not really involve cultural exchange and these different things. So number 20, the answer would be D. Moving on to 21. That means we're now moving on to that section, rights, responsibilities, and governance, right? So number 21. Let's zoom in again. I want to make sure we see everything. Number 21. Which branch of Dominica's government is responsible for enforcing the laws of the land? Is it A, judiciary? Is it B, legislative? C, parliament? Or D, executive? So A and B would be some of the answers that the students would give, like the most popular answers that students give, even when I give my grade 6 students these questions. But what I will say is that the legislative is more for passing the laws, whereas the judiciary is for actually enforcing the laws. This would be like the courts and these different things. So remember, the question asks us which branch of Dominica's government is responsible for enforcing. That is the important word here, enforcing. So legislative is for passing the laws, but judiciary is for actually enforcing the laws, like sending people to jail and these different things. So the answer for 21 would be A. Number 22. In a general election, candidates are, is it A, a branch of local government, B, a group of leaders who look after a country, C, people who wish to be elected as leaders, or D, people who are opposition leaders? The answer for number 22 would be C. They said in a general election, and candidates, that's the important word here, candidates. They did not tell us a pal rep or whatnot. Candidates, right? So it would be C, people who wish to be elected as leaders, okay? Moving on to 23. This person was once the head of a communist slash socialist form of government. We have A, Sir Arthur Lewis, B. President Fidel Castro, C. Marcus Garvey, or D. Dr. Eric Williams. Now you have four names here. You need to know who are these people. Now, Sir Arthur Lewis, he was actually a St. Lucian economist, and he made many contributions in the field of economic development, and he was also a professor of political economy at Princeton. So that is Sir Arthur Lewis. He's actually the guy on our EC dollar. So there's this man on the EC dollar. That is Sir Arthur Lewis, and he is from St. Lucia. Well, he passed away. B, we have President Fidel Castro. Fidel Castro, I would say, was one of the most influential leaders, political leaders in the Caribbean. He actually led his country from 1959 to 2008. That is just about 49 years. That's almost 50 years as a political leader. And actually, from 1959 to 1976, he was a premier, and then from 1976 to 2008, he was the president. And he was the one that transformed Cuba into the first communist, so you hear that word already, communist state in the Western Hemisphere. So that's like the Caribbean and whatnot. And he became a symbol of communist revolution in Latin America. So I would consider him one of the most influential political leaders, because to lead a country for 49 years, that is truly impressive. And actually, he had to give up his, he didn't fully give up his presidency. I think it was in 2006 he started coming down with some health complications. So he gave some temporary, he gave it to somebody temporarily, and then after, in 2008, he decided to fully give up the presidency, and I think he passed away in 2016, somewhere around here. So yes, he was the first communist. He was the first to actually create a communist state in the Caribbean and the Western Hemisphere. Then we have Marcus Garvey. Well, we know him as Mr. Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And Marcus Garvey, he is from Jamaica, and he was a political activist and actually the founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, UNIA, or if you want to call it UNIA, whatever. And it was formed in Jamaica in the year 1914. Now, you might be asking, but what was the aim of that Universal Negro Improvement Association? And it was to basically achieve Black nationalism through the celebration of African history and culture. So this is what Marcus Mosiah Garvey, that's what he was all about. He was a political activist and the founder of that Universal Negro Improvement Association. He was Jamaican, and he died in 1940. So that means he had nothing to do in communism and this and socialist government and nothing like that. Okay. Then we have Dr. Eric Williams. Dr. Eric Williams is actually he was, I should say, a Caribbean historian, and he was actually the first president of Trinidad and Tobago, and he was known as the father of the nation. Although he did have a pragmatic socialism approach, but it wasn't necessarily like communism or anything like that. It was more, his mind was more leading towards making Trinidad and Tobago the most wealthiest Caribbean nation, right? And it did happen. Trinidad and Tobago has a lot of resources, and he used that pragmatic approach into making it that way. But he wasn't into communism and socialism and these different things. So, and he actually wrote a book called
Capitalism and Slavery. I actually read that book. It's a pretty impressive book, and in that book, this is where he talks about how the decline in the economy in the Western Hemisphere during slavery. This is actually what led towards the independence of slaves. So because the economy wasn't doing well, the slaves were dying, and all these different things, he believes that this is what actually led towards the emancipation and the abolition of slavery. So you need to know about these people, right? You need to know about them. But if you were listening, you would see that the person who best suits the answer would be B, President Fidel Castro. This person was once the head of a communist socialist form of government. Remember, I told you Fidel Castro, he was a political leader in Cuba for 49 years, 1959 to 2008, and he transformed Cuba basically into the first communist state in the Western Hemisphere, and he became a political, how would I say, not necessarily political, but a communist revolutionary in Latin America as well. So yes, the answer for number 23 would be B. And I really love these subjects like social sciences, history, and this is very interesting. And as I always tell my students, the more you read, the more you learn. The more you research, everything is at your fingertips. The internet is there for you. Use it to your beneficial. Use it to your benefit. Sorry. Yes. So number 24. This island recently became a republic country in 2021. This is a question where you need to be listening to the news. You need to be staying abreast with what is happening locally, regionally, and internationally. When you are preparing for the grade 6 national assessment, you reading the news, listening to the news, listen to DBS, Carry FM, and other radio stations. There's MO News, there is Dominica News Online. Everything is at your fingertips. You guys had more resources than people of before. They had to go to the library and find out information. Everything is at your fingertips, so use it wisely. So we know it's not Dominica, we know it's not Trinidad, we know it's not Guyana, but it is Barbados. So before 2021, Barbados was actually an associated state of Great Britain, and they broke off those ties and they became a republic. So what a republic means is that the president is the head of state. Okay, so just like Dominica, and the prime minister is Mia Motley, and I believe the president's name is Her Excellency Sandra Mason. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe she is the president. She's actually the first president of Barbados and also the first female president of Barbados. And I believe that Mia Motley is the first female prime minister of Barbados as well. But please correct me if I'm wrong. I stand corrected, of course. So yeah.
So students, you won't believe what happened. Let me tell you, technology has its ups, but it also has its downfalls as well. So from question 24, the audio and the screen wasn't matching up. So what had to happen is that I had to delete that entire part of the audio. So what I will do for you guys, I'm going to create a part 2 of this video and I will upload it as soon as possible. But that's okay, every disappointment is a blessing and we move on from there. So I thank you guys very much for listening to this video, and I really hope that you guys are preparing for your grade 6 national assessment exams. I'm going to try my best to upload as much information so that you guys can be fully prepared. So until part 2 of this video, bye.